What's up, Jets Nation, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicy Jet Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Rooney, and in another wild day in free agency, we had to hop back on because the New York Jets have their QB1 for 2026, and it might be a name that you are very familiar with. So we are back to talk all about it, plus some of the other moves that have happened around the NFL, including one that just happened while I was sitting here about to record. So I am recording at about 8:15 on Tuesday night. So if anything else happens after this, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to talk about it, but we'll talk about it tomorrow or maybe in a short form video. But let's start with the massive news out of the New York Jets today. QB1 for 2026 is a name that we are all too familiar with, and his name is Geno Smith. The Jets' former second-round pick in 2013 comes back home, I guess, if you want to call it that. But he is back with the Jets. The Jets agreed to terms to trade with the Raiders for a pick swap. It was Geno Smith and a seventh for the Jets' sixth-round pick this year in this year's draft. And from a money perspective, the Raiders are going to take on most of the contract. The Jets give them a $1 million raise, and it's about $3 million against the cap for the New York Jets, so pretty close to league minimum for a starting quarterback. But, man, there were warnings. The beat reporters told us, we've talked about it as Geno being an option for this team a few months ago as free agency started, and you saw obviously how bad the Raiders were this year. But to see it actually happen and to see him actually come back to the New York Jets is just unbelievable to me. I cannot believe that we are going to go out there and watch Geno Smith as the quarterback of the New York Jets all over again. And I have plenty of thoughts on this. I have the positive side of, why this is actually a pretty good move for the Jets. And then I have my fan side, which is a lot of the negatives about this move as well. I'm going to take you through both, because I believe right now I lean more on the negative side of this entire move. But knowing me as a diehard Jets fan who's super passionate about the team, and I have an optimistic side of me, the move's eventually going to grow on me. It's just how long is it going to take for me to think, he might be the savior and he's taking us to the playoffs. He's going to reverse the curse and we're going to be back. That's just how it works. So let's talk through it all. So let's do the positive side. Let's do the positive side first. So positive side here is the Jets actually make a trade with the Raiders. Now, most people would say, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you wait for him to be a free agent? If you waited for him to be a free agent, all these other teams could have swooped up and picked him up. You had Minnesota out there, who was definitely an option for him. I know he was interested in a few other spots as well, where he probably could have been a backup and still gotten paid all this money from the Raiders anyway. But I think by us putting it out there, he probably could have gone to the Colts and started while Daniel Jones was still recovering, for example. But for us to trade for him, where it's really meaningless, obviously these 6th and 7th round picks don't mean a lot to Darren Muji because he trades them like crazy. And we didn't do a lot with them in last draft when we were late in the draft. It seemed like Darren Muji didn't know what he was doing at that point. So I'd rather trade away these picks. So I think to get a pick swap out of it is totally fine with me. So you gave away nothing, and then you're paying him barely anything. So that's the good thing. He doesn't count anything against the cap. It's not like these past couple years where we're still paying Aaron Rodgers and we're still paying Justin Fields all this money because of what we offered him from a guaranteed perspective. And it's only a one-year deal. So it's a bridge guy. This is a guy we just got to deal with for a year, and you can either re-sign him to mentor our rookie quarterback that we draft in 2027 or the one that we draft this year, or you just let him walk, and maybe he'll get paid more, and you actually get a comp pick out of it. So who knows what happens there. Now, regarding the player, Geno Smith was definitely an immature player when he played for the Jets over 10 years ago. Who wouldn't be? You're 22 years old. You come into all this money. You're the starting quarterback of the New York Jets, literally in New York City. It's a tough spot for a young quarterback. And he has definitely matured and progressed over the years. He's obviously dealt with a lot. Going from the Jets, he played for the Giants, he goes to the Chargers, he backs up Russ in Seattle, and then he finally gets his chance to play and looks like a really good quarterback. And I think in 2 of the past 3 years, he's had over 4,000 yards passing, which the Jets haven't had since Joe Namath. Actually, let me pull up his stats from the past few years. Let's see, Geno Smith. Statistics. So, yeah, in 2025, even with the Raiders, let's not talk about the Raiders right now. Let's talk about the Seahawks. So, in 2022, he had 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 100 passer rating. Then he comes back in 2023 with 3,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 92 passer rating. And then 2024, 4,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. So, the interceptions got a little high. So, I think the positives are you have a quarterback who's done things that no Jets quarterback has done since Joe Namath. No one has eclipsed 4,000 yards, and he's done it twice in the past 5 years. So you're getting someone who's like not afraid to sling it. He's a guy who's going to be fun to watch. He's going to throw it probably all over the place. He likes to throw it deep. He'll probably get Garrett Wilson the ball as much as humanly possible. So I think he's got the potential there. Now, the other piece to it is look at where he came from. So obviously he's coming off his worst year of his career as a starter with the, or at least as a starter in recent times, with the Raiders, where obviously they get the number one pick. They were the worst team in the NFL. Why were they the worst team in the NFL, though? Look at who he had on that roster. That offensive line is one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. Ashton Jeanty couldn't get going behind that offensive line, and he was the young up-and-coming prospect, running back prospect in last year's draft. Look at the receivers that he's throwing to. His best weapon, Brock Bowers, was out for almost the whole season. Who else? They trade Jacoby Myers, who was probably his best weapon. So who the heck is this guy throwing to? So you look around and you compare what Geno Smith had with the Raiders, and then, of course, Chip Kelly being an awful offensive coordinator. There was all this dysfunction there. Pete Carroll obviously not being successful as a head coach there. It was a mess. And the Raiders organization has been a mess. Like, look at their ownership. You talk about the Jets all the time. Look at their ownership and how they've handled everything. They fire coaches left and right. So he was in a disastrous situation in Vegas that I don't know if many quarterbacks would have been super successful behind what Geno Smith had to deal with in Las Vegas. So I think there's a lot of positives that he's going to come into a better situation where we still have to shore up our left guard, but we've got a better offensive line that he's going to be behind with two young, fantastic tackles, a great right guard in Joe Tippmann, a center who held his own last year, and then we'll see what we do at left guard. And then you've got some weapon. You got Garrett Wilson, you got A.D. Mitchell, you've got hopefully either a rookie wide receiver, maybe we trade for Brian Thomas Jr. or some other veteran receiver out there. And then you've got Mason Taylor at tight end. So, and then, of course, Breece Hall. You got a good running back. Of course, Ashton Jeanty probably has more upside than a Breece Hall, but Breece Hall's done it before. He's probably had 1,000 yards from scrimmage like 3 years in a row. So I think this is a better situation for Geno. The big question is, how does he mesh with Frank Reich? How does he mesh with, I'm sure he'll mesh with Aaron Glenn pretty well. It seems like most people do who really love football. So there is upside. And then the other piece to this, look at all the options that were available. You look around, it was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins did not want to come play for the Jets. We've seen it a million times. We've watched the video of him literally saying the Jets have to keep raising the price on how much they're going to pay me so the Vikings will pay me more and I can go there. So he was not coming here. Kyler Murray clearly didn't want to come here, and I didn't want Kyler anyway. I'd rather have someone probably like a Geno Smith than a Kyler. I don't like Kyler. Derek Carr is a disaster. He couldn't even play last year because of all the injuries. He was not a guy that I was looking for. And then everyone else who's kind of interesting either got re-signed or was already under contract. Mac Jones, you'd have to trade a lot for. Jacoby Brissett was just named the starter. They're not trading him away. Marcus Mariota signs an extension with the Commanders. Tua goes to, and another guy I didn't want, goes to the Falcons. All the guys, Tanner McKee you'd have to trade for. Jameis Winston you'd have to trade for. It was really difficult to find somebody that you could actually, what are we going to do, trade for Deshaun Watson? So I understand the move from a Jets perspective. So these are all the positives. These are all the things where it was like, hey, we probably got the highest upside quarterback who's actually a football player, who's thrown for 4,000 yards, had a bunch of touchdowns, won 10-plus games with the Seahawks 2 years ago. And that's where we're at. So I think those are the positives. Those are the things that you can get excited about as a Jets fan, and I totally understand why people are with it and excited, especially if he could be the guy to bring us back to the playoffs or at least get us to a winning record. Get us 8 wins. We haven't had 8 wins in over 10 years, which is insane. He was probably here the last time. Actually, he was here the last time we had 8 wins. He had a broken jaw, couldn't speak, but he was here. That's the crazy part. So the question is, what's the downside? Now for me, this is me speaking as a fan, not as someone who's like analyzing roster moves or anything like that. As a fan, I did not like Geno Smith as the Jets quarterback. He was probably one of the most frustrating quarterbacks to watch. And this is when I was like growing up as like starting to become an adult and all that kind of stuff. So I loved Chad Pennington. I loved the fact that we had Brett Favre for a year. I thought we were so good then. Mark Sanchez like brought us to the promised land a few times. Then we had him. And that's where it all started to fall apart for me as like a Jets fan, where like I had a very bad relationship with quarterbacks. So I'll take you back to 2013. This is the draft he was drafted in. He was taken in the second round, and I'm in a fraternity, and in that I'm still in college. So while I was in my fraternity, we would always every spring go up to this massive house. We'd bring plus ones. We'd do awards. We'd have a great time. You know, you're playing games in the backyard, all that kind of stuff. I am a sicko. I am a Jets sicko. So everyone else is having a great time. I don't know where my plus one is. I have no idea. I feel bad. I probably just left her out there to hang out with all my other friends there. But I'm watching the NFL draft while I'm up at this house. And I'm watching the second round, and I knew it going into the first round. He was supposed to go in the first round, Geno Smith. I was like, please don't take him. This just feels like Christian Hackenberg all over again. Please, I don't want to do it. You heard all these reports about him not interviewing really well. When we took him, I like jumped up and down, slammed the ground with my like stomping my feet. I was like such a baby, but I was also probably drinking at the same time. I was so pissed when we took him. But luckily we still had Mark Sanchez. So I was like, all right, we'll see if Mark Sanchez can do better. He was already not doing great. We knew he was kind of on the way out. But Rex Ryan's an idiot, and he puts him in the fourth quarter of the Snoopy Bowl. Sanchez gets hurt, and then Geno Smith has to play. Now for me, it started with Geno Smith like, all right, let's like root for him and let's see what he can do. He started to get better. There were some games that were really bad, but there were some ones that stand out. That first Buccaneers game where he runs out of bounds and then gets pushed out of bounds with the penalty, which puts us in field goal range to win. That was a really fun game. There was this game with the Bills where he was throwing a Stephen Hill big touchdown. Santonio Holmes was still on the team. He's throwing big touchdowns to him, which is absolutely crazy that we're talking about Santonio Holmes and Geno Smith, and he's about to be a quarterback in 2026. And you see him getting better. He had a great game against Atlanta on Monday Night Football in Atlanta. Throws a nice seam route to Jeff Cumberland for a touchdown. Then you see the great game against the Packers where there was the phantom timeout where he threw a touchdown pass to Jeremy Curley, but like Sheldon Richardson called timeout or something crazy like that for us to lose that game. Then he has the great finale against Miami where he throws 2 touchdowns to Eric Decker, has a perfect passer rating. I'm like, all right, we might have something here. And he can run. He's mobile. It's like, okay, I'm starting to warm up to him. It took me a long time, but I finally started to warm up to him. Then he gets punched in the face by IK Enemkpali. One of the craziest things I've ever seen and ever heard. You know, you get the notification. Jets starting quarterback Geno Smith out for 10-plus weeks with a broken jaw because his own teammate punched him over a $600 plane flight and broke his jaw. IK Enemkpali will go down in history as one of the more famous Jets players because of this moment. And because of that, and we had a great, like we had weapons on that team. That team, I was very excited because we had Geno, Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, Chris Ivory, Revis comes back, Cromartie, all these people. I'm like, we're going to have a real football team. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick steps in, has one of the best seasons in Jets quarterback history, takes us within one game of the playoff where, of course, he blows up in Buffalo, and that's it. And then finally Ryan Fitzpatrick comes back, and he plays horrible, and Geno Smith's going to come back in and play. And then he tears his ACL. And that's the end of the Geno Smith experience. So there's really not a lot of like fun stuff to talk about with Geno. The thing that I remember most is him getting punched by his own teammate, breaking his jaw. And I just can't imagine someone doing that and then being hired back into that same position with the New York Jets 10 years later. So I think that's one. I'm like emotionally scarred with this guy. And I think that's why it's really negative to me. It's like I'd rather watch someone else than watch someone that I've seen hurt me in the way that Geno Smith has hurt me because of the way that all went down. And maybe it's not even his fault. Maybe it's IK Enemkpali's fault. But it didn't feel good. And I'd rather watch someone different. I think that's where I'm at. Number 2, you look at what happened to the Seahawks. He leaves the Seahawks, even though he had some great years. They bring in another Jets quarterback and they win the Super Bowl. So is Geno Smith the one holding him back from winning a Super Bowl? Maybe, maybe not. But it's not good when that quarterback goes from one team and he leaves that team, they dump him, and then they win the Super Bowl, and the team he goes to, they're the worst team in football, and they get the number one pick. And you're under Pete Carroll. It's like, how did this not work out? So I don't know. I have a lot of qualms with this. Like I said, I'm going to warm up to it over time. It's a cheap deal. It's a 1-year deal. I think he's going to have some moments that we're going to get really excited. He's going to have some really nice passes to Garrett Wilson. I know that. I think he's built a good I think the tight end is going to be involved with Mason Taylor. I think he can build a good rapport with him. But I think you should get ready for Breece Hall to have another big year because we're going to need to run the ball a lot. So that's where I'm at on Geno Smith. Still can't believe it happened. It's absolutely insane. But Geno Smith is our quarterback. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're a Jets fan, you haven't thrown out your Geno Smith jerseys from 10 years ago, and you haven't thrown your Demario Davis jerseys out from 10 years ago because the boys are back. And what a great story it would be if he could come in, be the guy who, Mark Sanchez was the last one to make the playoffs for us. He was the next quarterback in line, and then that whole drought started, and then he comes back and takes us to a winning season or potentially the playoffs. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. I still think this roster is not good enough. I don't think we're close to competing. If you look at the rest of our division, I don't think we're close to the Patriots. I don't think we're close to the Bills at this point. But it would be a cool thing to see, us actually be competitive. Now, a lot of people will also say, is this going to spoil the tank? You can't really worry about that right now. You can't worry because who knows? Geno Smith could get hurt in the first game, and then we're rolling with Brady Cook again or whatever. So you can't really worry about it at this point. We'll see how it goes, but no matter what, we've got a bunch of picks that we can trade to move up if we really want a quarterback, so I wouldn't worry about it today. Let's focus on wins. We need to get wins. We want Aaron Glenn to stick around. We want this team to be better. And, you don't want Garrett Wilson to want to leave either, so you want him to have a good year and be happy here. So that's where I'm at on the quarterback. Now, the big question is, who's the backup quarterback going to be? This one does not feel good for me either. It sounds like Carson Wentz is the front runner for the backup quarterback spot. I really don't want Carson Wentz. Why do we need Carson Wentz? I understand that Frank Reich and him like each other, but he just hasn't done anything good since those Eagles days. It feels like he's just been a cancer wherever he goes, and he's constantly hurt, and it's just a mess. So, I don't know. I'm not really pumped about it. That's not going to get me excited. I just hope that Geno stays healthy at that point, so we never have to see Carson Wentz. So we'll see if they actually sign him. Let's go on to the other big signing today. This one was actually one of my favorites. Nahshon Wright from the Chicago Bears gets signed by the Jets. It is a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. I think it can go up to $6 million. The reason I love this one is, one, he had 5 interceptions last year. That is 5 more than the entire total the Jets had last year. He, unbelievably, tied the league lead in interceptions. I think he had a pick 6 or 2 as well. I can't remember. He's a tall corner. He's 6'4", very much like a Sauce Gardner size cornerback. The problem is he's not the best in coverage. He's more of an opportunist, I would say. And yeah, I think I'm pretty pumped about getting him because I thought he was going to go for a lot more money. I thought this was a $10 million a year corner, and we got him for $3.5. I'm like, how is that possible? What is wrong with him that he was out there for $3.5? And I think it's some of his coverage skills. He gave up 5 touchdowns, I think, last year to receivers. But if he's a guy that can cause plays, wreak some havoc, I'm happy to have him. So I really liked this one. I thought this was a very high value play. So now you look at free agency so far as a whole, or at least the last 2 or 3 weeks. You got Tavondre Sweat was traded for with Jermaine Johnson. You get Nahshon Wright. We got Dane Belton at safety from the Giants. Kingsley Egbenare from the Packers at D-end, who's going to stop the run. David Onyemata, who used to play under Aaron Glenn at D-tackle. You got Demario Davis, who used to play under Aaron Glenn, and is a 3-time Jet. You got Joseph Asai at edge, who can do a little bit of pass rushing and rotate. You got to feel pretty good about some of the names that we brought in, and then you've got your quarterback in Geno Smith now. So I actually think the Jets have gotten a lot better. I think this has been a really good free agency where we haven't broken the bank either. We still have money to spend, and we still have holes to fill. So what I'm looking for over the next couple days is left guard. I think we need someone to fill in so that it's not like a lock that we're going to take a guard at 16. I really don't want to take another offensive lineman in the first round. We've just been doing that for so many years. I really don't want to do it anymore, but if we have to, we have to. I'm looking at number 2 wide receiver still. Is there anyone in the trade market that you can get there? I think now we've gotten our corner depth, so I don't think we have to worry about corner or safety anymore. I wonder if there's another linebacker that maybe you bring in. I'm also looking at third tight end. Is there someone to play with Mason Taylor, Jeremy Ruckert, and that other guy? Who's that other guy going to be? Could be someone we draft. And then finally, we need backup offensive linemen. I think pretty much all of our backup offensive linemen are free agents. So you got like Xavier Newman. You have guys like Chakuma Okorafor, who's a free agent. I think Max Mitchell's also a free agent. So who's going to be those guys to back up some of our offensive linemen? So that's where I'm at so far. Other news that's happened so far inside of free agency, one that's really pissed me off, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but late last night, we get the notification that our old buddy, AVT, Alijah Vera-Tucker, our old guard, signs with our most hated rival, the New England Patriots. 3-year deal, $40-something million. Patriots are betting that he's going to stay healthy. Knowing the fact that he played on the Jets and now is going to the Patriots, I bet you $1 bajillion he stays healthy, becomes an all-pro, and is one of the best guards of all time. Like, that's just how it goes for us. It never really works out for us, but it works out for other teams. So it's a big bet for the Patriots. What I'm really pissed about is I hate when players do this. The Jets have done nothing to Alijah Vera-Tucker. Every fan has supported him through all the injuries. Everybody wants him back. I think everyone's a big fan of AVT. And you just, after 5 years being with us, you have other options of places to go too. I know the Giants were after him big time. And you go to the Patriots? Like, how do you even do that? I don't get it. I could see if you were like a David Harris, where in that case, we cut him out of nowhere. The Jets did him dirty, and we love David Harris. We did him dirty, and then he goes to the Patriots. That's fine. We wronged you, and we put you in a bad spot. You can go there. We're still going to root for you. So, I don't know. I don't understand how you can do this in good conscience when you have other deals out there that are also strong that can bring you in. Now, of course, I don't know all the details, but it really just drives me nuts, and now I really hope that ABC is horrible and he stinks so that we can sack Drake May as much as humanly possible and don't have to worry about him being amazing. Like, that's where I'm at. Now I hate him. So that's how it goes. So that was a really tough pill to swallow late last night, but we knew he was going to go somewhere else. At this point, it was just becoming pretty clear we weren't going to sign him. But man, why'd you have to go there? There's just 3 teams you can't go to. The Patriots, the Bills, and the Dolphins. Like, that is it. You can go anywhere else. Ugh, drives me nuts. All right, the other big thing, absolutely crazy. This just happened literally as I was recording. There was a massive trade for Max Crosby. It was 2 first-round picks, things like that, between the Raiders and the Ravens. And it sounds like Max Crosby did not pass his physical. Therefore, the Ravens have backed out of the trade. And the picks go back. So 2 first-round picks go back to the Ravens. And the Raiders are stuck with Max Crosby. They just spent over $200 million in free agency, and now they have to take Max Crosby's contract back on. I don't know what they're going to do at this point. I imagine this is going to hurt their negotiating. Someone's probably going to trade for Max Crosby, but what's it going to be for? Also, he's got to get healthy and actually pass the physical for whatever the next team is. So, man, I don't know. This is a pretty wild one to follow. I'm very excited to see what happens here because I've never really heard of this before, or at least I can't remember it happening where a team, with this big of compensation is backed out of a trade. So that's going to be a fun one to watch. I imagine the Ravens are going to pivot and just sign like Trey Hendrickson or something like that at this point to fill that spot, which is not a bad consolation prize. All right, I've gone long enough. I wanted this to only be like 10, 15 minutes. It went 25. So I apologize, but there's just a lot to talk about. So with that, what I'm going to do is I will continue to update across all social platforms throughout the next couple days. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure there's going to be more signings and moves. The official league year starts tomorrow at 4, so all of these signings and trades will become official, and the Jets will actually announce them, which they haven't thus far because they can't. And that'll be it. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. If you can follow me across all social channels at JuicyJet25, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. please do all the nice things and subscribe, follow, review, like, all that stuff. It would really help me out. And otherwise, that's it. I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Good luck refreshing your Twitter and following up with the rest of the news that's happening in free agency. And I will talk to you all maybe tomorrow. See ya.